All right. Well, good morning, everyone. It's a pretty solid, packed couple of months for programming. It looks awesome. I wish I was closer to Iowa. So again, for those of you who are at the session, my name is Matt Knight. I'm with the University of Alberta, so just a little bit further north. Um, I run our Family Business Institute, and then I'm an executive professor focusing on family business strategy and AI. I had the privilege of being at the kind of the annual conference to talk a little bit about the AI paradox. I will go into kind of a high level, if you missed that session, I'm going to do what I did in that session, which was an hour in about 7 minutes, and then try and spend most of the time going back and forth between different demos and different opportunities for everyone to get their hands right into AI. So we have kind of three different spots where people can, either follow along or can actually, log into their own screen and practice some of these things. So I will also be putting a document that has some kind of tips and tricks in the chat as we're going. So feel free to use that. Yeah, but before, maybe we'll get back to that. So again, the focus of today is much more about getting hands-on. So I'm not going to be spending as much time going through the actual, academic content or the background. So let's get started. So when we were there last, we really talked about how, all of the success that as family businesses and family business leaders we have is really through, relationships and trust and values. And we're in this really weird point now where AI is the future, or supposedly the future. And, to kind of recap, that's the question that a lot of people are asking. But at the same time, I like to think that, people asking about whether or not AI is the promise of or peril, there's always a lot of discussion around, is it evil? Is it amazing? I'm not going to tell you where I personally sit because that's probably pretty obvious. But this is actually the wrong question for us to look at. And we want to really go into a couple of reasons why it is the wrong question. So we'll look quickly at both sides. So the promise is reason is or the promise is real. It's pretty fantastic. AI can automate just about everything we do. It can analyze data at speeds that have been impossible in the past, and impossible for humans. And it can really help to actually preserve our institutional knowledge within our family businesses and can actually help us to pass that knowledge down as well. So it really translates into efficiency and can become much more of a competitive edge. But the the peril is also real. AI is actually going to be, replacing some of the human judgment that we've used to build our careers and our family businesses. It is going to erode some of the relationships that we have. And it's going to create some technology dependencies that are not healthy. It's going to eliminate jobs, and it's going to compromise all of our privacy if we're not careful about how we use it. So for business families, it's not really a financial conversation. It's almost more existential. AI is really actually going to corrode some of these trust and these values that have made us resilient across generations. And we really need to get into how we're using it. I was going to do a poll, but I'm not going to today. I'm gonna try and save more of the time for actual engagement and conversation. But really, think a little bit about where you sit in this scale right now. Have you, started to explore, or have you not started to explore AI at all? And that's kind of why you're here today. Are you curious but extremely skeptical? Are you currently exploring and testing and piloting? Are you using it, in absolutely, a few areas, or using it absolutely everywhere, like me, and trying to apply it in ways that it doesn't even make sense sometimes, but you're just looking at how you can learn and do more. But wherever you are, I find most people, that I've talked to about this, probably most of the people on this call, are going to be somewhere between that 2 and 4 level. But this is a really good place to have this conversation where you've started to use it, but at the same time are still, you're open to using it more and also open to learning a lot more about it. So, the family business paradox, kind of what we talked about at the conference, this is part of what we were going to resolve, but these things that make us curious or cautious about AI, whether it's the patient capital or the values or the relationship focus, these are also exactly what can make AI a competitive advantage for family businesses. We don't need to rush to create guardrails for AI because our family businesses have such a strong value set within the families that it actually helps to guide some of these decisions. And you can actually put that into your AI and have it, think that exact same way and start to kind of replicate some of the value that you've been able to build that way. And this kind of, the other side that all those relationships, the decades and generations of business that creates a incredible proprietary data set that our competitors can't replicate. And it also means, with that patient capital that we can invest in AI the right way. We're not going to jump on the quick trend that's going nowhere. We can think about, are we doing the right things? And I actually think that AI or family business is actually going to be one of the last moats of competitive intelligence, especially when you look at AI, because in an era where AI can do almost any business function, what really is going to set businesses apart is the legacy, is the brand, is the name, is the values that help grow it to where it is today. And family businesses have that way more than any other type of organization, and that type of brand and that type of value set and that legacy can't really be replicated, no matter how good your AIs are. So I want to kind of shift the question to not necessarily be, is AI evil or not, or is it amazing or not, but how can we actually start to design AI to work with human intelligence and and just kind of get beyond that. So to do this, we've developed a model that we're going to use as a bit of a base for today that really looks at, what are the three ways that you can use AI within your business or within your life. So our research kind of brings up these three practical frameworks. You can think of AI as serving these three roles, or these three agents. We're also starting to call them, and I'm also going to go through some examples of how I use them all, and then there's going to be opportunities for you all to try this as well. So the first one is the digital assistant. So this is the one that kind of handles routine tasks that actually allows us more time to focus on relationships. So we don't necessarily need to be, taking notes in a meeting like this as much because we have the little transcriber bots going and we can go back to look at those every once in a while. The second one that we'll look at is the data wizard, where it can find, patterns and data that would take us weeks or hours. And then the last one, which I think is the most fun, is really that agent as the creative coach, where it can actually help us as a thought partner and really kind of challenge what we're doing. Before we get into kind of the hands-on part, I wanted to give you a couple of almost, prompting tips and kind of some prompting types, because that's really the big thing that sets people apart now is the ability to, use AI effectively really relies on how are you asking the AI to do these tasks that we need help with. And kind of the five different ways we can do this. There's five different types of prompts. You can go in here and you can ask AI to do things in different ways. Informational is really when you need, facts or definitions, maybe that kind of research assistant. Instructional is when you want AI to do something specific, like maybe draft an email or create a document. Exploratory is more that open-ended brainstorming. And it may be saying, what are the options for this? Creative is where we actually start to push the AI to generate new ideas and content. And then analytical is where we start to just give it a whole bunch of data and ask it for patterns and conclusions. And we're going to push at all five of these today. But a good place to start if you're new or if I'm going really, really fast is that informational or instructional, where you're just wanting to know how to make dinner tonight with the 12 ingredients that you have left in your fridge because you were so focused at work that you didn't go shopping, or that informational of what is the just asking a very simple question. And then when we get into some advanced prompting technique, there's different ways you can use AI as kind of a chain of thought. So almost asking AI to do things step by step. It really helps to improve the accuracy of some complex questions. There's tree of thought, which is more about multiple reasoning paths, where you can do them simultaneously and you kind of get different perspectives on that same problem. Iterative refinement is really about, kind of how you bring the output out. So, first draft this, then refine it, then polish. It's not going to be perfect the first time. I like to say it's the same as if you bring an intern into your organization or MBA student, it's not going to be perfect the first time, and you're not going to trust that final product to be sent to a client. Don't do that with AI either. You still really need that kind of that trust and validation before you move forward. Comparative analysis is really about how you ask AI to, evaluate multiple options. And the scenario simulation is where it can get quite powerful for family businesses, where you can kind of model what if, succession changes, what if the market shifts, what if, there's different governance decisions that we take. And again, you don't need to memorize this. You don't need to, remember these 10 different types of prompting that I talked about right now. But the key takeaway here is, really about how can you get it very, very specific. Um, okay, so our first one here is really focused on our digital assistant. So the digital assistant is really that entry point. So again, I like to think about this as a very capable intern. It handles your mundane tasks so that you can focus on what matters. It could be your relationships, it could be your judgment, it could be strategy. It can help draft first versions. It can help give you ideas, but you're the one creating the final product. You're the one making the decisions. You're always that human in the loop where you're helping it to make decisions. And this could be, meeting transcriptions. It could be email management. It could be helping with your calendar scheduling. It could be organizing documents, or it could be kind of that dreaded travel and expense management. So this is a very, very quick example. So I use this, this is from a board prep meeting I had with my academic director, where we basically went through and had this, hour-long meeting where we talked about what we were going to talk about with our next board meeting. And we then, had all this transcript and action items. And I can search these at any time, and I can feed these into my AI and say, hey, I just, I'm trying to change my board agenda for my next meeting. This was the conversation we just had. What changes do you think I should make? And again, I'm not going to get it to make those changes for me because this is going to my board. It's very important, but it can help me think. And it can help me, give me critical feedback on how I'm presenting things. So this is the part that everyone's probably been waiting for. So this is kind of that opportunity for you all to kind of get hands on keyboards, or phones or whatever you're using. I will put more of this in the chat so that you can use the document and cut and paste it as well. But basically, we'll take 5 minutes. Go to your own screens, try it. Open ChatGPT, Claude, Gemini, Grok, whatever you use, whatever you want to try, and use one of these prompts. And again, don't think back to those 10 things that I just told you because humans can't remember that many things. Just think of breaking it down as task, persona, format. So, summarize this meeting with 3 decisions, or you know, tell me how to improve my family business, pretend that you are Dan, and give it to me in a table. So be very specific and just think about that task persona format structure. I'm gonna try and figure out where the rest of my screen is. Okay. If someone could give me a thumbs up if that document opened, or a thumbs down. Okay, we got a thumbs up. We're good. So again, it's 7:22. No, it's probably 8:22 for you all. We'll we'll give everyone until maybe about 7:26, and then we'll move on. And again, if you want to ask questions, feel free to unmute. Feel free to put them in the chat. So far, I just have meeting notes, people talking to me right now. So I should get my AI to talk to those AIs. We see the question number there. Richard did ask about, is it worth paying for the business version? I would say if you're using it for your business, 100%. Anytime that you're not paying for a product, you are typically the product. So, if you are paying for an enterprise version, you have a lot more privacy around what they do with your data. And there's a lot more security in terms of knowing that it's not going to be used to train models and things like that. So I would say yes, it is worth paying for the enterprise versions if it is something that you're going to be using regularly for your business. So is anyone getting some good responses from the different systems you're using with just trying to basically use that very simple task persona format. We use this in class a lot too, where we'll be working on a business plan or something with some of the students in a strategy class, and then we'll say, okay, well, can you redo this entire business plan, but pretend that you are Elon Musk, and it will change everything really drastically. And the example that we're typically working through is like a coffee shop. But then you add in the Elon Musk, and it becomes this AI powered coffee shop that changes, how much power you need to buy and how many computers you need to buy for the startup. So it's really kind of neat to see how just those little personas will really change a lot. Okay, nice. And then we have Brendan who's using it in ChatGPT and now going back and forth between ChatGPT and Copilot to see how the differences look like. That's also a very fun experiment is, to go through the different systems and see what types of answers you get. I have a list of like about 25 questions that I will go or ta and tasks that I go through every time a new model comes out, just to see how it progresses and changes and to be able to keep a tab on things. But that might be a little bit nerdy for most people.
No way. Can you get too nerdy? Come on, man.
I don't think so, but
That's right. That's right. I used have you heard of you have. I'm using Manus this morning to create a little 15-minute discussion. I teach a class on strategic entrepreneurship after anyway, Apple just announced a $600, $500, $600 laptop, which kind of
mhm.
flies in the face of their pricing and structures in the past. Anyway, this thing is robust. It put together a Flash web page that I can post on the for the class. It's got facilitator notes. It's got video. Holy schmoly!
Nice.
Um, yeah.
Okay. So the next agent that we're going to go into, and again, we'll go right back into a bit of a demo here. I'll walk through just so people can kind of see a little bit, not necessarily more advanced, but asking for a lot more things. But our next agent is really the data wizard. And this is where things get really interesting and fun for family businesses because we have so much of this data around kind of decades and generations of customer data and financial records and governance documents and we can see so many different patterns using these tools in minutes. And it can really, this is where the big shift in AI has come over the last little bit that I'll talk about shortly, but where we're really starting to see, kind of going into becoming almost using AI as a source of competitive intelligence instead of just using it to store data. And again, this is where can look at customer relationship data, it can look at financials, it can look at marketing and sales performance, it can look at different portfolios and do some risk assessment, it can look at the market, it can do a bunch of different really fun things. So what I'm going to walk us through here is, we all probably have some questions around this, but we're going to get our data wizard to basically become the analyst and turn some documents into a strategy for us. So I'm going to take five family employment policies. They're from mostly from or based off of real families. I've taken off the actual family names and company names just for confidentiality. And we're going to basically ask the AI to look at the patterns across these ones and then help us create a new custom policy for our family business based upon what these five other families are doing. And really, what matters most here is really, this AI is an analyst. It's not just making us content, but it's helping us to actually find patterns in documents that would take us, a couple of hours to do manually. Okay, so I should still be sharing. Okay. Can everyone see my Claude now?
Yep, it's there.
Okay. So what I'm gonna do is I'm just gonna bring in um, five of these policies. So I just can see them being dropped or popped up there now. So there's kind of a different one for a different for five different companies. And again, these are, we'll see what they say when we ask the AI, but basically here's Cascade Group. I just pulled up one at random. They're established in 1952. They're fourth generation. They're diversified in hospitality and real estate. This was put into their family assembly in September of 2023. And it kind of goes through their philosophy, how it's applied, what their program is, how they compensate family members when they become employees, how they look at performance and how they exit. And then this is, this is kind of a living document. They look at it every 2 years through the family assembly. So we've dropped in these five different policies. And what we can do here is, I'm gonna type in here, I'm attaching five family employment policies from different family business. Each takes a different approach to how family members enter a business, how they're compensated, and how they develop within the family business. Please read all five carefully. When you're done, confirm what you've received and give me a one-sentence summary of each policy's overall philosophy. So that's what I typed. I did that very quickly there. You can see how good my typing skills are now. And here you can see, we're getting some pretty good answers. It's, I got all five. Here's a one sentence read on each. So, the one that we just looked at with Cascade Group, multiple pathways, the policy honors different life experiences and doesn't require prior credentials, but channels less experienced family members through a formal 12-month development program before they can step into management. So makes some pretty good sense. If we look at the other ones, North Star Services, their open door, honest culture, as a young first generation business, the founders explicitly keep barriers low and really care about those relationships. So what's neat there is, the AI read all of these documents. Each one is only about 3 pages long. But that didn't take very long for it to kind of go through all of that, and give us everything. So if we were to get a consultant or an analyst or a family member to go through these five other policies, it would probably take an afternoon. So next part I'm gonna do is I'm gonna ask it to go a little bit deeper. I'm gonna say, hey, now analyze these five policies together. I want three things from you. Look at common ground. What are the themes or best practices that appear the most or in all of the policies? What do these families agree on? Number two, what are the key differences? Where do the policies diverge the most? Create a comparison table showing how each family member handles entry requirements, compensation, performance, and exit. And what are the trade-offs here? So for each of the major differences, explain the pros and cons of each. What's the risk of being too strict? What's the risk of being too lenient? So yeah, we type that in. And you'll notice, as I cut and paste, and I do that a lot where I have some prompts that I will use fairly regularly. So I have basically a folder in one of my files where I just have all these different prompts saved as text documents, and then I can copy and paste them as notes, and I'm not rewriting this, 4 or 5 paragraph prompt every single time. So here's what it's saying, common ground, despite, three generations, five industries, and lots of different governance, these families actually agree on more than you would expect. They have a separation of employment from ownership. They have a market rate compensation. They have mentorship and supported entry. They have performance accountability, and then they have a conflict resolution provisions. And then here I get this nice table that I asked for, which I like to ask AI to create a table for almost everything. and it will go through these 5 companies and it will go through these different dimensions and tell me exactly what we're seeing in each one. It gives me a couple different trade-offs. If you're being too strict, this is maybe something you should look at. If you're being too open, this is what you're thinking about. And the middle path, this is what it could look like. Yeah, so that comparison table, that's the instant almost pattern recognition that's being created by this AI, where it finds what's going on in all these documents and brings it out for us. The trade-offs, this is where, I'm actually getting it to do some thought for me. So I'm not just saying, tell me what's in there. I'm saying, well, what's the risk if we do this versus that? So it's starting to actually think a little bit and provide me with some feedback instead of just kind of regurgitating some information. And then, again, if we had a lot more time, we could actually go through, we could ask questions about each. We could think about which one we like the most. We could start to give it more about our family. But, I'm going to make this a little bit more interesting now and get it a little bit faster too. And I'm just going to ask it to use what Claude calls a skill. So they have all the different AIs have this now, but I'm going to actually say, like this is more of a special training that you can give your AI. And the one that I'm going to use is for it to actually create a document. So then I'm not just getting this text in here. So I'm going to say, hey, use your doc skill, create a professional Microsoft Word document, a family employment policy for a fictional family. And this family we'll use in the next breakout. It's the Parkland family. They're third generation. They're agriculture equipment. They're 85 employees. And we can actually go through, and as I type this in, again, you can see kind of how how detailed I'm getting, where I'm actually saying, use this docx, here's the information about the family, brand the document using ABFI brand colors, and I should have maybe made up a new brand or used uni. There's not going to be enough purple in here maybe. But here's my fonts, here's my colors. So it's really neat to have it, go through all of that almost immediately, and say, use a lot of tables. I love tables. And the policy should really look at, best practices from the 5 policies you analyzed, balance meritocracy with family development, address non-family managers' concerns, and include these section headers. And then save the file as Parkland Family Employment Policy Draft. So again, I'm being very clear here that I want it as a draft, because I'm not going to send this to the family before I read it. I'm going to go through it. I'm going to put in my own thought. I'm not just going to take whatever AI gives me and start sending it out to people, because that's a big risk. Again, I wouldn't do that with a first day analyst or MBA student. I'm not going to do that with Claude or Grok or whatever pet name you have for the AI that you use. But
Hey,
again,
Matt,
yeah,
could we, as a family, put in like let's say we have a mission statement or a list of values or, even vision or some of those kinds of background documents or things that we've worked on as a family. If
yep.
we pointed it to those as well, I'm guessing maybe we could get a little bit more personalized, a little bit more, I don't know, some buzzwords that would resonate with our family type of thing. Is that
Yeah,
doable?
that is a great suggestion and idea. And what I typically use, for all of these systems, you can have like a one, like there's an area where you can customize it to you. So you can actually go in, give it all of that information ahead of time and say, okay, well, here's our values, here's the strategy that we're working towards, and have it, either in a notepad that you just kind of copy and paste for every single prompt, or you can have it at the beginning and kind of built into the section that you're using within the AI. And then it's always there. It's always going to be a lot more tailored to what you're doing, and can be a lot more custom. And you can see here, this is giving you a lot, like it's looking very nerdy and technical. That's just the settings that I have on because I like to see exactly what it's doing. But if you don't understand what's going on here, it's just basically running some JavaScripts to help build out the Word document. And again, normally the standard view doesn't give you all of this. But again, I like to see exactly what it's doing and see how it's thinking. So we'll come back to this in a little bit. Our AI, might not have had enough coffee yet, so it's probably going to take another 5 minutes. So I don't want to just have us all watching the JavaScript. That's probably only exciting for me. But we'll come back to this in a little bit. And what you saw here is really the data wizard doing what it's best at. So it's taking these 5 documents, it's finding patterns, and then it's creating something new for us. And the same approach will really work with any government's pattern or governance document or pattern, whether it's a shareholder agreement, a board charter, a dividend policy. But again, don't we're not going to use this shareholder agreement without going through legal review and things like that. Like this is not replacing our advisors. This is not replacing our the people within our organization that do a lot of these things. It's more helping people to ask better questions and look at things a little bit more strategically. Okay, before I move on, no, actually, I will keep on moving on. Okay, so our third agent is really this creative coach, where we're starting to see, the AI work a little bit more as a thought partner. So, it's going to help us with conversations, it's going to help us brainstorm, it's going to give us options, it's going to refine things through back and forth dialogue. And this is where you can get some really cool kind of thinking and planning and whether it's investment theses or succession planning conversations or product innovation, you can start to have some really fun conversations going through. Um, and this is a really neat tool that, again, all of us can log on to and use right away. So this is where we can kind of see the creative coach in action. And I won't kind of walk through what's on screen because we'll actually be able to log into it and the links are there. But Summit Simulations is actually a tool that I've built within the university. We use it within a number of our classes where we have a family consulting version where people go through and they have all of the families loaded in or the families loaded in. They ask the family members questions, and depending on how they ask questions, they get different answers back. So the really cool thing is we're using it to help with creativity, but it's also helping them to learn soft skills. So some of the complaints that we get about graduates is that, when they come into a family business, they might understand all this technical stuff, but they don't necessarily know how to pick up the phone and do a cold call. They don't know how to, relate with people within the organization the same way. So that's where they might need a little bit more coaching. And oddly enough, the AI, even as a technical system, can help with a lot of that. So we'll get hands-on here. We'll probably only do about 10 minutes in this, which will be enough. But think of us as Parkland governance. So Parkland is a third generation family business. They're going through a major transition. And we have 4 different board of directors or AI advisors within this. We have a strategic analyst. So think of that as like a recovering McKinsey consultant. We have our family business expert or the professor. We have the devil's advocate, and then we have our CFO or the financial advisor. So these are, and you'll see in the demo, these are different things that you can actually ask directly. So if we go in here, so if you go to summitsim.com, you just need to log in with an email address or something like that. We're not going to spam you. We're not going to give you we're not going to send you anything. You can delete it afterwards if you want to. But it's just to kind of keep some of this intellectual knowledge a little bit more gated so that the AIs can't come and take it all. So as you come in, go to this one in the middle here, which is the AI Board of Advisors, and then just click on Launch Simulation and make sure, which they all should be there by default, make sure that the case here just says Parkland Governance. Otherwise, it might try to answer things with other family members, which might not be good for our scenario. If you want to know anything more about, so these are the 4 advisors that are here. There's the strategist, the professor, the CFO, and the contrarian. You can click on this little button here for About the Board, and it will tell you a little bit more about each one. And again, the advice here it gives you is, start with one advisor, be specific, engage in dialogue, seek, contrarian views. So don't just ask it for what you want to hear. See what kind of some of the other perspectives are. And then if you want to know a little bit more about the family, and again, I know that this we're doing this pretty fast. This is normally about a 25, 30-minute exercise. The situation here is so like many family businesses, legacy construction company is facing a lot of governance and strategic challenges. They have some limited board diversity. They just have family members and one longtime advisor who also happens to be the founder's golf buddy. There's a lack of outside perspective. They don't have that in any independent directors. And the patriarch is really hesitant about bringing in other new directors. Um, the key question is, should they make a $2 to $3 million investment into sustainable construction materials? Because that's what everyone's doing these days. And how do we manage this transition given the conflict that it's created between Gen 1 and Gen 2? So, AI can help with, a bunch of these different advisors. It's going to provide us with diverse perspective. And then, just kind of go through this and ask questions. So I'll let you all kind of go through that on your own if you want. But I'll also, as you're doing that, I will find an example to go in as well. So I'm going to go in, I'm going to pick all of them just because it's more fun. So we'll maybe start with one of these questions that are in here, which is just, is sustainable materials a new business unit or transformation of our core business? What's the right structure? So our advisors were deliberating, and now they're coming back and giving us their views. So we can see here, the strategist says, sustainable materials represent an evolution from our core business, not a standalone unit. Starts to talk to us a little bit about the growth of the market and what some of the things might be. But he sees some tension, or they see some tension between the CFO regarding financial allocations and risk. The professor, they agree that the market shift from the strategist, but it's really more than just metrics. It's more about generational dynamics between Gen 2 and Gen 3, or sorry, Gen 1 and legacy. There might be a clash with the governance structure that's currently being developed by the CEO. And again, I won't read each one of these, but we could then say, so the CFO says that strategic push towards materials raises financial red flags. Investing this much without something first is going to jeopardize our liquidity. So we could pick any one of these characters and actually go back saying, well, actually, I feel this way. Or we could go, hey, CFO, how do you feel about what the contrarian said? I really should have made that an easier word. Should have called him the jerk or something. So the CFO actually says, they have some of the same skepticism of the contrarian. They recognize these pressures, um, and they don't want to, rush into it. Um, and we could then shift back and say, hey, family business professor or family business advisor, what other things should we look at from a family perspective first? What kind of governance questions should we be asking before we go ahead with this? So there's lots of different ways that we can go with this, and it's just really neat to actually see these different advisors being able to have that conversation back and forth. And what we've been able to do in some of the workshops and breakouts that we do with families is they can start to almost customize this to the board of directors that they want to have in the future, and then start to almost use it to practice. Think about how they get value from governance. Think about the types of people they might want on their board. Think about what gaps might show up on the advisory board if they don't have the right perspectives on there. So it's been a fun way to kind of illustrate that if you only have the board that this governance or that Parkland had originally, where, there's a lot of, those discussions, or there are a lot of only family members. Think about, the opportunity if you're, expanding to get these professional advisors, and think about how much more, growth and benefit you're going to get for your family and your business, if you're able to do that. And we also like to, be very, again, be very cautious. This is not replacing your advisors. This is not replacing your board. The only time it might replace your board is at 2 o'clock in the morning if you can't pick up the phone and call them, and are up in the middle of the night with a very tough situation. But again, this is a tool. This is something to help us. It's not going to replace these advisors. It's really there to kind of prepare us, as family businesses, to ask better questions. So as we start to learn these perspectives, as we start to practice this dialogue, we can have way better conversations. So we like to ask people to really think about, which one of these professors, or which one of these advisors do you resonate most with? Do things come up that you hadn't thought of, or that you wouldn't have thought of? And how do you think an AI board might actually be able to help your family situation? So I know I got about 9 minutes, and I want to leave some time for dialogue, but just wanted to say a couple of kind of things to wrap up a couple of the thoughts, just to give a little bit of more structure and organization here. But really, where we've been over the last, 5 years or 3 years has really been this generative AI revolution. It's been really cool. It's been fascinating. We get to see AI doing these tasks. It's typically a single task. It's typically much more around content creation. So, what would my dog look like if he was a human? Terrible thing to do, but everybody does it, and everyone's having fun. But so it's a neat experiment. It's not a lot of value, but it's a neat experiment, and you're kind of driving this. Where we're going now, and I would say this probably started in November, is really the era of agentic AI. And this is where we can actually start to delegate complete tasks to our AIs. We can start to do it, just start to have it, analyze our financial transactions and look for risk every Wednesday. And again, that's not where I suggest people start. But you can really start to build out these, multi-step workflows. You can get, tasks completed on a regular basis, and it just kind of drives with your oversight. And really, what we're seeing in a lot of the ways we're using this, whether it's with family businesses or in the classroom, is that these skills that we used to actually dismiss as being soft in the past are actually the ones that are really hard. And they're actually becoming a lot more difficult with AI. So management skills and those soft discussion and question skills are actually going to become the superpower in this age of AI. Um, and what does this? Oh, I won't talk about. I'm going to go more to, a couple of disclaimers. We talked a little bit about some of these throughout, but really, AI is an amazing tool, but don't use it with sensitive family or business relationships. So don't ask, "Hey, should I fire my CFO today?" Or don't ask if you should, bring your brother into the family business without any governance work first. It's not going to be able to get into those complexity so quickly, and it's not going to know your exact personal situation. So don't replace your own brain. Don't ask for, major financial or life decisions. So don't ask for stocks to invest in this week. Don't upload your own confidential or personal data without really thinking through the security. So again, little things that you can do there is things like having the proper paid version, so that you're not becoming the product of that system. And don't use any of these outputs without reviewing or checking them. So we are responsible for whatever we produce using AI. So just like you wouldn't, send an email without, reading it yourself, you should really, always make sure that you are the human in the loop, and that you're understanding what's going on. And lastly, especially as family businesses, don't use AI to replace those human connections or networking. So don't ask it, if you're having a really tough emotional day, don't skip going to your family therapist and ask AI how to help. There's still some really valuable human connections that really in this era actually become more important. And I'm starting to see, these human elements are actually going to become the skills that are much more important in the future. So let's maybe turn it over to questions. And I wanted to save more time than this for questions, but I got excited and I wanted to see the AIs in action.
Hey Matt, how far away are we from being able to uh, feed in a bunch of social media accounts, things like that, create ways to try to make the AI tool turn into a sibling of ours and have a conversation with them about, how I want to take over and I don't think they're a good fit for the business or whatever it is, and create some sort of a practice conversation with a fake person before I have it with a real person.
We're more or less there.
Is there any
Um,
benefit to doing that?
yeah, there's massive benefits. I've had one of the boards I work with, we've uploaded all of the personas, so all of like the disc profiles and different things that the of all of these board members. And it was actually able to predict about 60% of the questions that these people actually asked.
Okay, cool. Thanks.
Matt, would you be willing to revisit that document that was being scripted? And would you be willing to share the prompt that
Yeah.
you created for that?
Yeah. Let's see what it created for us. That is a perfect question.
I'm particularly interested in the prompt that you used to create it, where it was formatting and well structured, all that stuff. It looked like a pretty extensive prompt that could easily be copied, pasted, and edited for maybe somebody else's business.
Yeah. So here is the document that it created for Parkland Family Enterprise. Here's our draft for Family Council to review. It starts with the why this policy exists, goes through and gives us the purpose and scope. So entry requirements are inspired by Westbrook Holdings. So it's actually giving us some of the references here. Family members must meet at least one of the following criteria before applying for a permanent role. They must have a minimum 1 year full-time professional employment outside of Parkland Family Enterprise in a role demonstrating accountability and skill development, and relevant. Or they must complete a post-secondary credential. Yeah. So I will share
I-
this document to
It's
be
not,
distributed.
the document is great, and share that. Thank you. The prompt of how to build to build a well-structured document is what I feel like that's the creative gold here, is that prompt.
Yep. Yeah, no, I
Okay,
can share both of those.
awesome. Thank you.
And those prompts are developed, with kind of those things that I put at the beginning of, how do we structure this? What kind of tasks do we want it to do? Actually, I will, yeah.
Is this sort of prompting designed for Claude, or can you use it across different AI tools?
It would work for anyone. Prompting is, for the most part, prompting. How you use, like, the different AIs are going to give you different answers, but the same, like, yeah, it's not going to change drastically. Like, I don't prompt differently for different systems, and I use kind of three or four of them regularly. I'll prompt differently for kind of different outcomes that I want, but not for different systems.
Well, thanks, Matt. This is pretty sweet. I think we'll maybe call it good there for today. You gave us a great way to kind of start utilizing these tools a little bit more than we already were, I think. I'm I'm definitely gonna take that prompt that you're gonna share and do some things off of that because my stuff looks nowhere near as detailed as that. So thank you so much. Thanks for your time with us here today and at our conference. Thanks everybody for joining us, and Hopefully we'll see you soon at some of our upcoming programs. So with that, I'll let everybody go and have a great day. Thank you.
Thank you, everyone.
Thanks, Matt.